This video will show you 3 signs that you are an immortal spiritual being having a temporary human experience. I'm going to show you the sure signs that that is a very strong possibility and how you can really tap into that part of yourself. Welcome back to another video. My name is Aaron and I help people expand their consciousness. Now in this video, I'm going to be going in detail as to how we may be spiritual beings having human experiences. I'm going to share with you some of the things that we know about people's experiences that they've had, also somewhat of what we know of quantum physics, and I think the last one that I share with you, you'll really begin to see how some of these really come into play. Now, the first thing, let's understand, is the quantum physics type perspective. Now, I did a video recently that was on 3 things that we forgot. Or 3 agreements that we made before we were born, and that video went viral. So I'll link that video at the end of this, but it got such good feedback from you guys that what I decided to do is to make more videos kind of like that. So as far as the quantum physics goes, and the first one I'm going to be talking about has to understand this very core basis of quantum physics. And they say that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It is something that just simply changes form. Now what this means is that even though it appears that we were born into this life and it appears that we were created out of nothing, the idea is the energy is simply transferred, and the energy is something that came up. I believe that we chose to be here. Now, as weird as that may sound to some people, the idea is that there's always a deeper understanding or a deeper level of awareness. Now, a lot of people may have gone through a lot of pain growing up. They may have gone through a lot of really situations that you just can't completely understand. But at the deeper spiritual level, there's always something to be learned. There's always something that can help us grow. And many times to become and have a spiritual awakening, there are people that have been through a mass amount of pain. They've been through so much that it created the pressure for them to then break out of it. So and also when I made that video on 3 things that we agreed to, what happened is there's a lot of people that commented on it. Some people were saying that, okay, maybe I was as privileged growing up and I'm just like this, kind of like this white privileged guy that always had everything handed to me. Now, not that I'm trying to defend that, but understand that not everything is as it seems, you know. And for those of you that have been following my channel, you may know that I went through a lot in my life in the sense that I was abused by my ex-stepmom. You know, now, I'm not saying that I have it any worse than, I know a lot of people have had traumatic experiences, but definitely it was an experience that was very challenging. I didn't have any freedom growing up. I was constantly being, my dad was is a firefighter, and he was gone 24 hours a day, so she was completely controlling. We weren't allowed to have friends. We weren't allowed to do anything except for yard work, and it was a very manipulated and abusive type of experience growing up until I was 15 and my dad divorced her. So all of a sudden, I had all this freedom, and the deeper meaning of that was something I actually agreed to at a deeper level. Now I know that sounds kind of crazy, but it's this knowing that I have, and the reason being is because that caused a lot of the pressure within me, asking why did this happen, why did I go through that kind of experience, and it really caused a lot of pressure for me to then come out of it and to understand this whole idea of spirituality, me to ask more questions, to wonder why things are the way they are, and I honestly believe that I would not be where I am doing what I'm doing if it weren't for a lot of the pain that I experienced from the ages of when I was like 9 to 15 years old. So, you know, those situations can be reframed. There can be something to learn from them, even though it may seem really harsh in the present moment or even when looked back at it. If you learn how to transcend it, it changes just about everything. So this is about just really understanding that energy is not created nor destroyed, it simply is. You can also look at this when you look at people that have had NDEs, near-death experiences. There have been thousands and thousands and thousands of reports of people who have been, quote-unquote, they died somehow and then they came back and they had experiences of having a life review. That's one of the most common things, where they kind of go through each moment in their life and they learned how they made other people feel. And I've had experiences like that in my own life, to be honest with you, where I've had a life review and I've seen certain things that happened in my life, almost like it was almost like there were crumpled up pieces of paper that were like laying them out in front of me, and I would see a certain scene or scenario like I was in the movie, and I would feel how I made somebody else feel, and then what happened is then that paper would crumple up and then it would open into a new scene. And I went through about 8 to 10 of those, and they were powerful because I felt exactly what the other person felt in that certain type of situation of whatever that part was. And now that's a life review, so I've experienced it, but also if you read thousands and thousands of reports of people who've had NDEs, almost all of them come back and they don't want to come back first of all. So what does that tell you? It tells you that there is something more than what we are currently experiencing. You know, there is more than just the 5 limited senses that we can feel through. You know, we have sight, hearing, touch. We're able to feel, you know, or that's the same as touch, but we're able to hear. All of these things are the 5 senses. And that's ways that we interpret our reality. But in actuality, there's vibrations everywhere. You know, those are vibrational interpretations. There is information, there is frequency everywhere. But we can only perceive that which we have the tools to perceive, and that's how we use our senses for the most part. So this is about understanding that that is limited, that there is much more to life than we priorly thought, that, you know, thousands of NDE experiences, you can read about them of people, you know, some people had experiences of like angels and religious type figures. It a lot of times is interpreted in the form of ways that we can relate to. So somebody is very hard Christian and they you know, believe very strongly in Jesus. What'll happen is when they go through that experience, they will most likely be presented with stuff that is in alignment with that. And that's because at the fundamental level, it's all an interpretation of the same thing. Whether you believe in Jesus, whether you believe in different religions or whatever it is, the idea is that we are all connected. It's all an interpretation of some divine essence and at the core basis of what it is. And what we can learn to do is to kind of use that and become aware of more of who we are. Now, the second sign that we are an immortal spiritual being having a temporary human experience is going to have to do with understanding this deeper level of hypnotic state that we can get into. Now, this is something that I shared in one of my prior videos, and it got such positive reviews from people that I want to share more about it. And it's this information on someone that is named Dolores Canon. Now, Dolores Canon was a hypnotherapist for about 40 or 50 years, for a long time. And she actually passed away maybe five years ago. I forget how long it's been. And she is a hypnotherapist who back in the 70s and 80s was developing this technique that could get people into, I think it's called a symbiotic state of being, which is like the deepest level of brainwave activity, the deepest level of subconscious. And basically what she could do is she could get people to this such deep level of brainwave activity that their higher self would come through, or their subconscious would come through, or they were able to communicate with deeper parts of themselves. Now, this is the interesting thing. She has interviewed literally thousands and thousands of people. She has developed a program or a process called QHHT, which is Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique, that teaches other instructors how to do the same type of technique to get people to that deep level of brainwave activity and hypnosis. And to thousands of people, she's been able to get people to this state of the deep subconscious. Now, here's interesting things that happen in that state. People's higher self would come through, and you could ask questions like, why did I incarnate at this time? What is my purpose in life? Why did I choose to be here right now? They'd ask questions like, why do I have this kind of relationship with my mom or my dad? Why did this happen in my life, this specific scenario? And there'd be answers that would come through. And a lot of times, almost all the time, this was a recorded type interaction. And a lot of times people would come out of it and they wouldn't really remember it. And they'd be like, I didn't say all that. I must have been making that up with my imagination. If they said that, then they could just listen to a tape recording of the words coming out of their actual mouth, talking about why they incarnated, stuff like that, and very deep stuff about the soul, just who we are. A lot of even talking about things like, you know, our existences on different planes of existence, you know, beyond just that of the physical earth realm that we understand. Very interesting stuff. And through thousands of people, there have been similar type of understandings as to how our soul works, how and why we incarnate at this time. But just to give you guys a little bit of basis, maybe something that makes you feel very inspired, is that we chose to be here at this time because right now we are at a pivotal moment of consciousness in life or in the world or whatever we want to call it. This planet is going through an evolution of consciousness. Things are changing faster than ever. Other than, I know it looks like there's a lot of negativity happening, but that's necessary in order for us to progress to the next state. And basically, there are so many souls coming into Earth right now because there's a certain desire to be here, because there is more evolution and more consciousness expansion that can happen in the next 100 years than has ever happened anywhere, and we are a part of it right now. Whether you remember it or not, there are thousands of people that came in here for this time that are, awake and coming more aware of this. I've had buddies that have been under this QHHT hypnosis technique. It's very interesting. I haven't done it yet, but I have read there's like 27 books of Dolores Canon, and out of those books, they're all transcripts. They're all just transcripts of her talking to other people's subconscious mind, talking to them at a deeper level. You even get into the more esoteric stuff of understanding that our soul has existences on other planets, which is a whole nother mind discussion. If you guys want me to elaborate that, I will on a prior video or on a future video. And that's just something that I think is very powerful. It really expanded my perception of who we are, understanding that we are so much further beyond that which we understand, that even our imagination could not make up all of these things that have came through thousands and thousands of people. And it's just something that I think is very powerful. I've had so many people tell me, thank you for introducing me to Dolores Canon's books. They've really changed my life. They've really made me understand things at a deeper level, especially if you've been through a lot of pain before. Because if you've been through a lot of pain, then you might be asking, why did this happen? Could there have been a deeper purpose behind it? And that's where I think you can really start to get clarity and to really transform that meaning you give it to really become much more than you priorly thought that you were. So the third step, or the third sign that we are an immortal spiritual being having a temporary human experience, has to do with people's recollections of their past lives. Now, in Dolores Canon, a lot of times the subconscious mind would bring these people or the awareness back to past lives, the future lives, all of these things and understanding. And in the past lives, we've seen a lot of situations, some of them have been talked about on the media, not so much, but the idea is that there are people, and kids especially, who sometimes have no different languages than any language they've ever been around before. Kids that have had past life remembrances of who they were, parents not believing them, and then them doing things that prove that that was something that happened. There was one kid, one of the most famous kids, or one of the most famous stories is this one kid who, I forget, was on the East Coast or what it was, but there was this kid that had a nightmare every single night of, not every single night, but very often his parents would come into his room and he'd have this nightmare, he'd be crying because he'd be having this memory of him in a plane getting shot down and going down into the ocean and dying. And he would have this memory over and over again, and his parents were like, they didn't understand why he kept having it. And he said that he, in a past life, was this person, and I forget his name, is John something. He even knew the person's name. And what happens, this person was shot down in World War II and was shot down into the ocean and died. And it was driving, he was in a certain type of plane and a certain name for the plane. So he said that, and his parents were a really hardcore Christian and religious, and they were like, no, that's a memory, or that's not a memory, that's like something you probably saw on TV or something like that. And he kept insinuating that that was something that's true. Well, he kept having those nightmares, those kind of experiences of that memory, and eventually they looked it up and they found evidence that showed that the exact name of the person the kid said he was, also the plane that he was in and that it got shot down was confirmed. And it wasn't something that was just like in a book for everybody to read. It was something they had to dig for to find evidence of. And if you look at the pictures of them too, there's a news article about it. You look at the pictures, they look kind of similar, which I don't know if that always happens, but there definitely is some type of correlation you could see. And it was a very interesting story. There have been other stories. There have been a lot of other stories of people remembering their past lives. If you just go online, I'm sure you can find a whole bunch. But knowing that that is a possibility, and seeing people that are able to connect to memories, connect to, kids knowing different languages, it's almost like those lives are bleeding through in this life, and there's, in a way, we're able to pull information from that. Now, of course, it depends on either people's belief systems. Sometimes it just has a deeper reason for happening, helping people understand more about who they are. But nonetheless, it's a very powerful understanding for who we are at a deeper level. And it's something I think can transform your life if you start to really wire that in. So If you guys want, I just also created a free MP3 guided meditation that will help you raise your vibrational set point. It's something that I think can help in this process of remembering who we are, understanding why we came here. It's a guided meditation that will show you how to raise your vibration so that you connect to the best possible version of yourself, connect yourself in a very spiritual, positive type way. If that's something you're interested in, I recommend you listen to it for 21 days in a row. It's in the description box. It's absolutely free. I'll go ahead and leave that there for you guys as well. So remember, 3 sure signs that we may be immortal spiritual beings having a temporary human experience is the first off, understanding that energy is not created nor destroyed, it simply exists. It transforms from one level to another. I believe that we chose to be here right now, that if you study any of the information when it comes to Dolores Canon, if you study how and why so many, there's thousands of people that have been through this process, have said that this is the most transformative time to be here in the history of anything. And what we can begin to do is know that, to trust that, to expand ourselves in how we can, and to get ready, because things are really going to be evolving over the next 100 years, and that even beyond that, we can be aware that we may have had past lives. It may not be relevant for us to understand every aspect of it, but just having that understanding can be very expanding for us, because it kind of takes out the feeling of the fear of death, because we realize that we will always exist, that we did in some level choose to be here, even if it was a learning experience, but we can really learn to tap into loving our life if we allow ourselves to. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Feel free to like this video if you guys liked it, subscribe if you haven't already. Also hit that little notification button so that you guys can see the daily vids that I do. And other than that, as always, peace, much love, and namaste.